Okay, so let us start today's lecture. I hope you can hear me. So today, before starting the proper thing, the things which I want to discuss today, I shall give you a, a brief review of what functionals are and what functional derivatives are. So, in the previous class, I calculated I gave you an example of a particle moving in a of a free particle rather, and calculated the equation of motion from the action by the extremization of the action. Today, what I shall do, I shall give you the definition of functional derivative and see how one can calculate by using the definition. So, before giving you the definition, I would like to tell you what a functional is. So, let us understand what a functional is. So, all of us know that the action, you can write it down in this way. The action is basically a functional of QE, and it is Q or T from some initial time, say 0 to capital T, to some final time capital T. What is this L? This L is a function of Q and Q dot. So this is known as the Lagrangian. Lagrangian, which is a function of Q and Q dot. And you see that when you integrate this is by definition, this is called the action S. And this action is a functional of Qt. And as I mentioned earlier, that a function, the usual notation is L round bracket of these two variables. But a functional, we usually put a square bracket here. So this is the usual notation for a functional. And what is this a functional? What is S a functional of? It is a functional of Qt. So let us understand what really a functional is. So before doing that, let us understand what a function is. So a function is, say, f of x. The function is f, and the argument that you have here is x. So a function is basically a map from a real number to a real number, to some real number, where x belongs to some real number. It can also be a complex number, but let us restrict ourselves to real numbers. So it is a map from a real number to some real number. So function basically gives you a real number from one real number. So this is what a function is. But a functional is, it is basically a map. This is a function. So this is once again a real number. This is some number. But a functional is basically a map from a function, and this function is a set of many numbers, right? Because for each t you will get a number. It will generate a number. So functional is basically a map from a function to a real number. So let me repeat once more. A function is a map from a real number to a real number, but a functional is a map from a function to a real number. It takes a whole function, it takes a full configuration, say sin x, cos x, e to the power of x, whatever form of the function is, and it gives you some real number after some process. So that is the difference between a functional and a function. Here, the action that we have here is a functional of Qt. Why? Because this is the Lagrangian function. So what it does is if you put in a form of the function Qt over here, then after doing this integration, it gives you a number. So this is like this integration is like a machine. Put in any form of the function over here, this machine gives you some number over here. So that is why it is a functional of Q. Why not Q dot? It is the action. You will notice that it is not a functional of Q dot. Why? The reason is very simple. Because Q dot means dq dt, but there is an integral over t. So that is the reason that it is not a functional of Q dot, but it is a functional of Q. So you put in any form of the function Q, this integration gives you some number on the left hand side. Now, with this background of what a functional is, let us now understand how to take functional derivatives. So the standard definition of, so if you have f to be a functional of f of x, so what this means that if you put in any form of the function over here, and this will give you, this functional will give you a real number. So it produces a number from a given function. If you have any functional f of x, then the functional derivative of this functional f with respect to this function f at y is basically defined by the following relation. So this is the definition of a functional derivative. And you can understand the origin of this. This is, by the way, your definition, but you can actually understand the origin of this definition in the following way. So say you take a variation of this functional, like we take a variation of this action functional. So if you take a variation of this, so this is nothing but f of x plus delta f. You can get rid of the arguments, f plus delta f minus f. So this is what it should be. Delta f of x is f functional of f plus delta f minus f of f. But this, we can write it down as integral over dx delta f of x This is how we can write it down. And now what we can do is the following. We can take delta f to be epsilon delta x minus y. So what this basically means is that you compute the functional derivatives. So this is the total change in the functional. So what this step means is that you compute the functional change of this functional with respect to this function at the point x, and then you integrate it over all x. That will give you the total change in the function. So that is why you have an integral over here. You compute it at each point. So this is at each point, and then you integrate this over dx. So now what we have is the following. If you put this over here, then you have delta f that is equal to dx so this will give us this by definition will be delta f that is equal to f f of f, just put it over here, and this is equal to integral over dx. We have this term over here, delta f and now you can perform the delta function integration. So if you perform the delta function integration, what we will have is epsilon delta f and now you can see that this definition that we have written down over here, this is the definition that we have written down. This follows because delta f of x is 1 by epsilon limit epsilon tending to 0 of this expression. So the reason I did this thing is to just give you a reason for the origin of this definition. This is just like the derivative, the ordinary derivative, the way we define the derivative in differential calculus. So this is the first principle definition of the functional derivative. So let us now proceed and do some examples by using this first principle definition. So the first example that we shall take is the following. Let us take a functional f of f which is integral f y to the power of n. So you can see that this f is really a functional of this f. So you put in any form of the function over here, and this integral will produce a number corresponding to that function. So this functional, this capital F is a functional of this function f. And what we want to do is we want to calculate delta f delta f of x. This is the thing that we want to calculate. And let us use the first principle definition over here. This will give us limit. The definition is this. So this step is just the definition that we have applied here. First step, and this is equal to, this is a plus b whole to the power of n. So you just need to apply the binomial expansion, binomial theorem. So if you do that, what we will get is the following. The first term is obviously fy to the power of n. The second term is plus fy to the power of n minus 1 into epsilon delta x minus y. This is the second term of the expansion of the binomial theorem. And then we will have terms of the order of epsilon square. So this is all about the first term. And then you have this term minus, so let me just close the bracket over here, minus integral dy fy to the power of n. You can now see that this term cancels with this term. Epsilon and epsilon will get cancelled, and this term is of the order of epsilon square. So epsilon, this term will become of the order of epsilon, and in the limit epsilon going to 0, all these terms will drop out. So what we shall have ultimately is the following. We will have this integral dy delta x minus y if y to the power of n minus 1. And this gives us, sorry, there is a n over here. I missed the n over here. So this is the second term of the binomial expansion is n fy to the power of n minus 1. So I will have an n over here. So this gives us n if f of x to the power of n minus 1. So when you expand this, let me repeat once more. This is fy to the power of n plus n fy to the power of n minus 1 into epsilon delta x minus y plus terms of the order of epsilon square. And then these two terms get cancelled. This term becomes order epsilon square divided by epsilon. So this is order epsilon. Epsilon going to zero limit, all these terms drop out. And what we have is n fy to the power of n minus 1. Epsilon epsilon gets cancelled. You perform the delta function integration, you will get n f of x to the power of n minus 1. So the functional derivative of this functional with respect to f of x is n fx to the power of n minus 1. So this is from the first principle. Let us do a quick calculation here. You remember that in the previous lecture, I used the following relation. I used the following delta f of x. So now you see, this is no more a functional, this is rather a function. So if I take a functional derivative of a function with respect to a function, I used this thing. I use delta f of x, delta f of y is equal to delta function. But why is this? See, a function you can think in a generalized sense that it is a functional. Once again, that you can always think, because this functional is a more general definition. It is a map from a function to a real number, but here the map is from a number to a number. So you can again, so functional is a more general definition, which can also include functions in its definition. So now you want to take delta f of x, delta f of y, and I use this relation. But now you can see that this relation actually follows from this definition of the functional derivative. That you can immediately see, because if you just apply the definition, delta f of x, delta f of y, that will be equal to limit epsilon tending to 0, 1 by epsilon. So here you will have f of x plus epsilon delta x minus y. So this is from this term, and this term is nothing but f of x. So this and this cancels, and epsilon gets cancelled, and therefore you get delta x minus y. So this follows, this thing that I used in the last class, this follows immediately from this definition of the functional derivative. Good. So we have done 2 examples so far. We shall do a couple of more examples now. So let us consider that we take this thing. Suppose I give you a function v of x, which is like the potential, right? So v of x t. So this is a function. The potential is a function of this coordinate. And what we want to do is calculate this delta x of t. We want to calculate this. And what will be this? So this is a function. So I just take this to be t prime. So if you just apply the definition, see in this example, if you take delta x t prime, delta x t, then that is a delta t minus t prime, because we have just now shown it. But now what I am taking is, I am taking a function v, which is basically a function of the coordinates at some time t prime, and taking a functional derivative of that with respect to the coordinate at some time t. So now from the definition, we have the following. This will become v x prime plus epsilon let us apply this definition. So this is the definition. This becomes x t prime plus this term, this one, and then minus of this thing. So this becomes limit epsilon tending to 0, 1 by epsilon. Now you just make a Taylor expansion of this. So this will give us v of x prime, the first term, plus epsilon delta t prime minus t. This is what we have. And then we have del v del x t prime plus terms of order epsilon square. One second. We can drop these terms because all these terms will go to 0 in the limit epsilon going to 0. So this is this term. The thing that I have written in this parenthesis is basically this term after Taylor expansion and keeping terms up to order epsilon. And then we have a minus of Vx prime. Now you can immediately see that this term cancels with this term. This is gone. And what remains is the following. All these terms go to 0. Epsilon gets cancelled, and therefore we have del v del x t prime into delta t prime x. But you know the property of delta function, del v del x t prime delta this, you can also write this down as del v del x t delta. This is also true. So the functional derivative of the potential function, not a functional here, with respect to this x of t, this is basically del v del x. So it is like chain rule. When if you just set this to, you take this to say suppose you take a function say v is equal to x kind of thing, then this will just give you the delta function. You recover this result that we have proved earlier. Just set v is equal to x, this will become 1 and you will have delta t minus t prime. But in case of an arbitrary function of the coordinates, it is like the chain rule. It will be del v del x t to delta of x t delta of x t prime, and that will give you this delta function. So all these results are important, as you will see, because these results help us in computing the functional derivative of the action functional, as we shall see now. So let us now take an example. Let us now do the following example. Let us take S of xt, action functional. This is basically 0 to t n by 2 x dot square t minus b of x dt. Right? And in the previous class, I have shown you that for the free, at least for the free particle case, I took delta s, the functional variation of this action, and I showed that this gives rise to the equation of motion. Just from the free term, from the free particle term, from the kinetic energy term. And this gives us the required equation of motion once you extremize the action. You can also do the same calculation by using the definition of the functional derivative. So let us do it by using the definition of the functional derivative now. So I will just break it up for convenience. I will just break it up into two terms. Kinetic. So this is the kinetic term t, and then you have this potential term 0 to t, t of x dt. And what we want to calculate is the following. We want to calculate delta s, delta x. This is the thing that we want to calculate. It's very simple now to calculate this. You can do it in many ways. The first way I showed you in the previous class, you can just take a variation of this action and proceed to calculate the functional derivative. You can also use the first principle definition of the functional derivative and proceed to calculate and calculate it using the definition. So let us now do it using the definition. So I shall first concentrate on the second term. Let us do the second term because this is very easy. We have the result first. So delta, if I calculate, so this term I will just call it to be, say, this is some so this term I shall call, say, something, maybe what notation should I give? And I want to calculate delta p, which is obviously a functional of x. I want to calculate this. Okay? So this is what I want to calculate for the second term. I shall do it for the first term in a moment. So this will give us minus integral 0 to t, and we have, I will just, so this is x of t. So what I shall do is, I shall put a dt prime over here. I shall make this prime, because this t prime is a dummy index, dummy variable, integration variable. So I shall make that dt prime, and now what I require is the following: delta v x t prime delta x of t dt prime. But this we have just now calculated. This was the calculation. We have just now done it. So we shall just put in the expression for that. And this was calculated from the first principle. So delta v, this thing is nothing but del v del x t prime delta t minus t prime dt prime. You can now perform this delta function integration. So if I perform this, I will get del v del x. So performing the delta function integration gives you this. So the second term is immediately, it follows from the calculation that I did earlier. Let us now do the first term, the kinetic energy term, and differentiate the kinetic energy functional with respect to xt. But we shall do it from the first principle, the definition of functional derivative. From the definition of this, we shall calculate it. So let us calculate delta t, which is a functional of xt, with respect to delta x, and that is equal to n by 2 goes outside, integral 0 to t, and once again I shall make the dummy variable t prime. So we have a dt prime, and then it is x, the kinetic energy term is x dot square t. Since I have changed the dummy variable to t prime, I will use t prime over here, and then the definition is x t prime plus epsilon delta t prime minus t whole square minus d t prime x t prime square. And then obviously you have limit epsilon tending to 0, 1 by epsilon. This is the definition. Now this is, I will just pull n by 2 outside, d limit epsilon tending to 0, 1 by epsilon integral 0 to t dt prime just a minute. হ্যালো, হ্যাঁ আমি রুমে ক্লাস নিচ্ছি আমি। না আমার অফিসটা বন্ধ আছে, এটা আপনি একটু পরে লাঞ্চে পড়ে আসুন। Okay, so now this term will become what? This is basically dx t prime dt prime plus epsilon d dt prime of delta t prime minus t whole square minus b dt prime x t prime square. You can just expand this and keep terms up to order epsilon. So if you expand this, you will get dx prime dt prime square. It's the first term, and then you will have twice epsilon d prime of x d prime, and then you have d prime of delta d prime minus t. And then there will be terms of the order of epsilon square, and those will go to 0 because you have a epsilon downstairs, so it will become term of the order of epsilon. In the limit epsilon going to 0, it will vanish. So I'm not writing it anymore. So what we will have is x prime whole square. So this term and this term will cancel. The 2 and this 2, this will cancel. Epsilon will get cancelled, and therefore what we shall have now is this is integral 0 to t m. Therefore this becomes d prime x t prime dt prime, and then we have d dt of delta. Now what you can do is, you can just perform an integration by parts. So integration by parts will give us the following. I can write it down in the following way. This will be prime. So dt prime of x dot of t prime. So this dot denotes differentiation with respect to t prime, obviously, and then you have delta t prime minus t. So this will generate this term. One of the terms will be this. So you have to subtract out a term, and that term will be x double dot of t prime. Dots are obviously differentiation with respect to t prime. Now this is a total derivative term, and therefore when you integrate this term will go to 0 at these endpoints. So that term will go out. What will remain is only this one. This is the term which remains, and therefore you can integrate this delta function term. If you integrate this, what we shall have is minus m x double dot t. So this is what we have. And now you can you have computed the functional derivative of this with respect to this, and also this potential with respect to x. That is the result. We can combine both these results. So our final result will be the following. So delta x of t is basically now equal to, if you drop the total derivative term, what we will have is the following: integral 0 to t. So this we have all these things have been computed. So we have minus m x double dot t minus lv dx. So this is the result for the functional derivative of the action with respect to the coordinate x of t. So this is your result. So this is basically, the problem is that of a free particle moving in one spatial dimension in the presence of a potential v. And if you write down the action for that problem, and you take a functional derivative with respect to the coordinate, this is the result. And as I mentioned, the extremization of the action gives you the equation of motion. So what we usually do is that for arbitrary variations, we vary the action with respect to these x's, right? So if you do that and you demand that the action is stationary for these arbitrary variations, so by stationary you mean that delta s is equal to 0, you recover the equation of motion. Once again, here also you get the equation of motion. The equation of motion, as I mentioned earlier in the previous class, it is delta s delta xt. This is the equation of motion. And that precisely gives us m x double dot t is equal to minus v del v dx. So delta s delta xt is equal to 0 gives you the classical equation of motion. All this that we have done today, you can do it by just variation. The way I showed you, the procedure I showed you in the previous class, you can do it in that way. But the things that I've shown you today in today's class, the procedure is basically from the first principle. So from first principle, we basically mean that you have a first principle definition for taking the functional derivative. You apply that definition and compute what the functional derivatives are. So this is another procedure of obtaining the functional derivatives. So you can take different other examples also. I would suggest that you consider other examples of functionals and try to take their functional derivatives. So that would be a very nice practice for you. So the first part of today's lecture was basically understanding what functionals are and how to take functional derivatives. So this was like a digression. So now I will go to the next part of today's discussion. So before going to the next part of today's discussion, I would just like to pause a little bit. So if you have any questions at this point, you can ask. So were you familiar with functional derivatives earlier, or how to take functional derivatives? Can you hear me?
Yes, Professor. We discussed.
You were familiar, comfortable with functional derivatives earlier?
Yeah, we learned it in classical mechanics.
Okay, you learned it in classical mechanics. Okay, that is
Sir,
good.
but the first principle that you showed just now, we didn't know that.
Okay, fine. So you were not aware of the first principle definition of the functional derivative, but this is what it is. Okay, good. Okay, so let's proceed now. So in the previous class, so as I mentioned that today's class, the thing that I told you just now, the first principle definition of the functional derivative, this was like a digression. So you just keep these things in your mind because these things will be helpful in the future for computing various things. So let us now go back to the point where we stopped in the previous lecture. So we were discussing something called the known as the cutting or sewing principle in path integrals. So let us start from that point. So I mentioned that if you have this propagator, this is basically up to some constant n. You can write this as a path integral. This is the path integral representation for this propagator, and this is your I by h bar action S, where you should always remember that you have boundary conditions here. The boundary conditions are qi0 and qft. Over here, e to the power of I by h bar action, and this action is basically 0 to t Lagrangian of q dot dt. So this is what we discussed in the previous lectures, and what we can do now is we can play a very simple trick that I discussed in the last class already. What you can do is you can put in a dq, and then you can write this as qft, qt, qt. So you can put in a complete set of position eigenstates here, basis states completeness relation here, and now you have an ordinary integral over q. This obviously runs from minus infinity to plus infinity. You have an ordinary integral over q, and you have two propagators, but each of the propagators you can write it down as path integrals. So this will be dq, but now the boundary condition will be from qt to qft for this propagator times e to the power of I by h bar integration from small t to capital T L dt. This is the path integral representation for this propagator, and then you have another propagator, and that will be dq. And here the boundary condition will be qi0 to the intermediate time and position q, and this will be e to the power of I by h bar integral from 0 to t, the intermediate time, and this is L. So the purpose of showing you this is the following. You can see that this was a path integral where the boundary conditions are from qi0 to qft. This path integral, you can actually break it up into two separate path integrals plus an ordinary integral. So this is like cutting the path integral open into two path integrals and an ordinary integral. So this is like this is the cutting principle. You could just reverse the argument backwards, and you can say that you can sew these two path integrals together up and plus this ordinary integral and sew it up to get a single path integral. So this is the sewing principle. If you reverse the argument backwards, you get the sewing principle. If you do this argument, the forward argument that I showed you just now, it gives you the cutting principle. So this is a very nice principle to have in your mind, because it can help you in many other different places. So just keep this in mind. And in the last lecture, I also showed you the following result, that if I take qft and just put in some operator at some time tn, so this is basically like taking the matrix element of this operator between these two states. So this is like a matrix element. So if you take this matrix element, so you know that the Hilbert space representation, or the Schrodinger, or the canonical way, or the Schrodinger approach of doing quantum mechanics is by taking matrix elements of different operators between different states, right? So we basically compute matrix elements. This is the operator approach. But this same matrix element can be translated to the path integral language in the following way. You have dq. Once again, this is the boundary conditions are q by 0 to q of t. And then this operator that you have over here, by the way, this is basically, you can use a short notation, q hat n. So this operator that you have here, this becomes a function of q here times e to the power of I by h plus integral. So taking a matrix element of an operator in the path integral language, it basically means putting an insertion in the path integral. So you see, this propagator was basically dq, this e to the power of I by h bar action. But now, if you put in an operator and take its matrix element, what we have done is the difference between this expression and this expression is the following. In this expression, there is no operator, and now in this expression, you have just put in an operator inside, right? And then you have sandwiched it between these two states, ui0 and qft. So putting an operator inside these two things basically boils down in the path integral language to putting an insertion, to putting a function over here in the path integral. So this putting a function over here is said to be putting an insertion inside the path integral. So now we are talking about insertions inside the path integral. So this is the Hilbert space language, and this is the path integral language. So you see that there is a one-to-one correspondence between the two representations. So this is about putting one operator. Now let us put two operators. Let us do the following. Let us put q hat t1, q hat t2. Now you take the product of two operators and take its matrix element between these two states. And you remember here that let us consider that since these are two operators at two different times, so here time ordering becomes very important, because let us assume that T1 is greater than T2. So if T1 is greater than T2, then you have to keep time ordering in your mind. It basically tells you that this operator, which is defined at the later time, since T1 is greater than T2, the operator defined at the later time will be placed to the left of the operator which is defined at the earlier time. So you have this condition, and now what you can do is you can put dq1, dq2, complete set of momentum of position states, uft, t1, t1. So here you have put in an identity, then here you had T2, and then you have Q2, T2, Q2, T2. Once again, this is another identity, and then we have Qi, 0. Okay. Now this will give the eigenvalue Q, T1, so we will have dq1, dq2, 1, you can write this as qt1. These are now no longer operators, these are numbers, and we have qt2. Since these are numbers, ordinary numbers, you can place them anywhere you like. Now time ordering is not an issue, because these are ordinary numbers, therefore they commute with each other. Here time ordering was an issue because these were operators defined at two different times, and you are not sure whether operators defined at two different times, they in general do not commute with each other. So you have to remember this position, this ordering. But here that is not the problem. And now you have QF, Q1, 1, Q1, Q1, Q2, Q2. So that is what we have. Once again, you can see that when you place two operators and take its matrix element, you have two ordinary integrals, and once again there are three propagators now. So this is from Qi to Q2 T2, then Q2 T2 to Q1 T1, and then you have Q1 T1 to Qf capital T. So all these things have path integral representations, and therefore what you can write is this will become dq1, dq2, qt1, qt2. Put the path integral representations of each of these propagators, and if you do it, you will get dq y 0 to qft exponential action, where this action will run from 0 to capital T. The time integral will run from 0 to capital T. So this follows from this definition, from this thing. You just put it over here for each of these propagators, and then you can combine everything in one path integral, and you can write it. The boundary conditions will now become qi0 to qft e to the power of I by h by action. This action is 0 to t and dt. So this is what you will get after doing this calculation. So this is for this ordering of time. You can do the same thing. You can say let T2 be greater than T1. Then what will happen? If T2 is greater than T1, then this will be placed to the left. This will be on the left of this operator because now T2 is greater than T1. Carry out the same exercise, do the same steps, then also you will get the same result. This will be your final result. Okay? Because here time ordering is not an issue because these are all numbers. So if T2 is greater than T1, then the matrix element of Q hat T2, Q hat T1 in these two states gives you the same result. So both these two orderings gives you the same result. So what you can do is you can just say that the time ordered product. So this is now a time ordering operator. You can say the time ordered product of these two operators defined at two different times. The matrix element of that is basically equal to this. And what is this time ordering? This time ordering of these two operators is defined in the following way. T1, T hat, T2. This is basically theta T1 minus T2. T2 hat T1, T2 hat T2. So when T1 is greater than T2, then theta is the theta function. So this will be 1. T1 is greater than T2, this is 1. T1 is less than T2, this is 0. So when T1 is greater than T2, you have QT1 placed on the left of Q at T2 plus theta T2 minus T1. So now when T2 is greater than T1, this one fires, and then you will have QT2 at T1. So this is the definition of the time ordering of two operators. So we have product of two operators. Time ordering of that is basically theta T1 minus T2 Q hat T1 Q hat T2 plus theta T2 minus T1 Q hat T2 Q hat T1. So we have derived another important result. We have derived the time. So what it basically means is that whenever you have a string of operators, you have a product of operators, then the matrix element, then you always need to incorporate time ordering. Otherwise, it is not meaningful. You have to incorporate time ordering. The time ordering of a product of operators, and you take the matrix element of that, you can write it as a path integral in this way. The path integral times ordinary integrals. These are ordinary integrals, and this is a path integral. Because this is an integral over all possible paths that end at time t is equal to 0 at qi and end at time t is equal to capital T at qf. So let us now proceed from this part. So now let us consider the following. Suppose in the earlier example that I showed you, I took a time-ordered product of two operators, of two position operators defined at two different times. But now let us consider the following. So these are operators which are functions of these operators. And suppose we have a string of such operators, a product of such operators. So this is O1, this is On, you had N. And as I mentioned, whenever you have a product of operators defined at different times, you must have a time ordering of them. Otherwise, it does not make sense. It makes sense if you say that T1 is greater than T2 and so on. But if you put a time ordering operator here, it means that it is already ordered in the correct way. And you take a matrix element of this string between these two states. The result is immediate. We have already done the calculation. So this will be okay. In the earlier thing, I need to be careful. In the earlier calculation, I just need to be careful to remember. Let me just go back to the earlier calculation. You see that QFT, actually I made a small error there. I need to be careful here because if I had put in the expressions, it would be all right. So just you see that this was the expression that I was considering. So this was equal to this is equal to two ordinary integrals, and then you have Q T1, Q T2, and then you have these propagators QF T1, T1. This is for the case T1 greater than T2, right? This is for the case T1 greater than T2. So QFT Q1 T1, Q1 T1, Q2 T2, Q2 T2, QI0. This is just the earlier case. Once again, I revisit the earlier case. Let us put in the expression for the propagators. So this is basically integral. This will give you what? This will give you from Q1, so it will land up to dqn minus 1 dot 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 to a time which is just the later step from T1, right? So let me call that dq, say this is 1, so let me call this 1 plus 1, not 2. Just interpret this as the later time from Q1 to Q1, right? So you have this, and then you have this integral T1 to capital T. Okay. So it would be nice actually, instead of this notation, let me use a better notation. Otherwise, it is a bit confusing. Let me use a better notation. I am sorry for this inconvenience. Let me put this as n and let me put this n. Now it will be okay. It is better to put m and n notations. Now the notations will be very nice. You see, I consider the case Tn greater than Tn. Okay. So that will give us what? This will become dqn and dqn. This becomes n. This becomes n. And since Tn is greater than Tn, so this will be on the left. So this will be qn, Tn, qn, n. This is n. This is n. This is n. This is n. Okay. Now you can see that you can write this down in a very nice way. This is integral dq n minus 1 to dq n plus 1. Hello. ক্লাসে আছি। So, sorry for this inconvenience. So let us start from here. Let us proceed from here. That is why I use this. I change the notation from T1 to T2 to m and n. So now you can understand. So this will be n plus 1, right? And then you will have an integral I by h bar integration from Tm to capital T, LT. So this is the first thing that we have. Now you have this one. This one is nothing but integration. This will be dq n plus 1 dot 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 dq plus just the one earlier dq n minus 1 to dq n plus 1. This particular thing, and this will be e to the power of I by h bar integral from Tn L dt. And then you have this term, which is integral. See, this will be dq n minus 1 to dq1 e to the power of I by h bar integral 0 Tn lt. I hope this is clear. Right? We have just broken all these things into 3 path integrals, and we have this thing. Now you see, in the calculation that I showed you earlier, I missed this part. You see, there will be the 2 ordinary integrals will no longer be there. Just a minute. I'm very sorry. Hello. So let us continue from this part. I'm sorry for the interruption. So now you will notice that in the earlier calculation, you can now see you have integrals n plus 1 to n minus 1, n plus 1 to m minus 1, and 1 to n minus 1. The missing links are dqn and dqn. So now what will happen, if you include these two integrals, the measure will be now from dq n minus 1 to dq n plus 1. So this to this, now you have dqm. So this comes here, dqm, and then dqm minus 1 to this, dqn plus 1. And once you have dqn plus 1, now you have dqn. So this now comes over here, dqn. And then you have n minus 1 to 1. So dq n minus 1 to dq1. So all these differentials have been taken into account. The measures have been taken into account. And now you have these integrals e to the power of these things. So you can combine all these exponentials to one exponential. By the way, you also have qtm and qtn. So this is now qtm and qtn. And then you can combine all the exponentials. This will be 0 to t L dt. I'm class A. So now you can see that you can combine this into one integral, because this is from 0 to t, this is from 0 to tn, then tn to tm, then tn to capital T. So everything can be combined from 0 to capital T. You have these functions, q, tm and q, tn. You have these over here, sitting over here. And then you have this full measure. And this full measure, therefore, is equal to a path integral from dq. So you don't have any ordinary integrals. This was the error that I made in the previous calculation. You don't have any ordinary integral. This will be qi0. But you should have noticed this thing at that point. So now this becomes a full measure from this point to this point, a path integral measure. Then you have these functions qtn, qtn times e to the power of I by h bar integral 0 to t L dt. So this is the result for the time order product for this product when tm is greater than tn. When tn is greater, when this is greater than this, then as I mentioned, this will go to this side. The result will be the same. There is, by the way, once again I repeat, there are no ordinary integrals. There is only one path integral, and you have these two insertions in the path integral. So you can combine these two results by saying that the time ordered product of these two operators defined at two different times, take the matrix element of that is equal to basically this path integral with these two insertions qtm and qtn times the ordinary thing, to the ordinary factor, the weight factor that we have. So this is the result for the time ordered product of two operators. Now the result that I wanted to show you, after that, once you have this result in place, now if you take this one, if you want to compute the matrix element of these operators and take and obviously you have to take a time ordered product of this, then this will be nothing but, from this result, you can write the result at once. This will be this path integral with the following insertions: T1, Qtn. So you have this product of these functions, and then e to the power of I by h bar integral 0 to t 0. So this is basically the action. Yes. So from this result, you can immediately write down a more general result for a string of arbitrary operators of this position of which are functions of this position operators. Time ordered product of that is basically equal to nothing but the same path integral, but with these insertions. These are all now ordinary numbers. These are no longer operators. These are numbers. So you have, so these are called insertions inside the path integral. So as I mentioned earlier, the matrix element, this is the Hilbert space language, canonical way of doing quantum mechanics, translates the path integral language in this way. So the matrix element of operators is basically equal to a path integral with insertions. This is the correspondence. So I think it is a good time to stop here for today. We shall continue from this part in the next class. So let us stop here at this point. So I will just maybe I will just take up a couple of questions if you have at this point. So we can continue from this point in the next class. Thank you very much for today. So do you have any questions at this point?
No, sir.
Okay. So can we close the discussion for today?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I will once again send the video link to Shoham, and Shoham can share it.
Okay.
Okay.